and swam to shore. The next theory is that he bailed out of the plane over water and swam to shore. Felicity Granger did say that before he left on his flight, he said that if things went south, he would just throttle the plane way back and just open the door and bail out. That's what he told her. Maybe that's what he did. But, of course, the reasons not to like this theory is the same as above.
Yeah.
Salt water and clothes.
Water, yeah.
Yeah. And also, I checked the stall speed for a Cessna 150 is 48 miles an hour, and I'm not sure how easy it would be to open the door at 48 miles an hour.
So this is the point where I geeked out a little bit, because he was in a Cessna F-150H, I think was the model.
I think
that was the newest model.
Yeah.
And I started reading through the changes that they had done to the planes in 10 years, looking specifically at like the doors and all of that. And the doors they had upgraded them to a simple latch handle, much like you would see in a car that's a 70s model. You know, the inside doors, they're just a simple lever rather than anything that's a little more difficult to get your hand on. But the other thing that they did, because Cessnas are so small, is they added 3 inches of shoulder room to the door for the pilot and the co-pilot, whoever's in the passenger seat. So I got the impression, and I could never really see an easy profile, but I think we've all seen pictures of Cessnas, and when you look at them dead on, they're not flat on the sides. They kind of flare out at the top a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? They're kind of a V shape.
Yeah.
So I could see, and I'm not nuts about this theory, but I went down this road anyway. If he's getting close to a stall speed, you know, this 50 mile an hour threshold, it is possible in my mind, not easy, but possible to, because he's got that leverage room now, because the door is kind of cambered over, to be able to push it. And that's one of those things to me that once he gets it far enough and the wind starts pulling in through that gap, it's going to help him. That air pressure that's rushing into the cabin, to me, would help pull that door, aid you in pushing. So you're not pushing against all of the wind, because the oncoming wind is now rushing in and rushing out that gap you've created. It's not perfect.
I think
I don't think that's a perfect theory, but I see how it's potentially plausible.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard. But if you're determined enough and desperate enough, you could probably do it. The other thing that makes me wonder about, though, is when you start pushing that, say you're going out the left-hand side, you're sitting on the left-hand side, when you start pushing that door out, what's the plane going to do? It's going to start making a left turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I mean, of course, at this point, you're abandoning ship, so maybe you don't care. I'd have to talk to somebody who's an experienced pilot and actually find out, well, how bad is this going to be? Is it just going to slowly start turning left, or is it just suddenly going to start like whipping around left, go into a stall, and then just start, spinning madly down to the earth? I mean, I don't know.
Do we know if the plane was equipped with a parachute?
As far as I know, it didn't have a parachute in it. I don't think those planes are pretty small.
I know. That's why I was asking. Is I didn't think that would be something that you would standard have in a Cessna, but he's ex-RAF. He may have insisted on something, and I never saw anything about that.
Yeah, but he rented it. I think they would have mentioned.
Oh, that's right. He did. It wasn't his personal plane.
Yeah.
Another fun fact about him?
Yeah.
His flying license wasn't valid.
I know, it expired.
He was flying with a suspended license.
Oops.
Yep.
The cops were going to pull him over.
Yeah. I know, poor guy. Go to his graveside and write him a ticket.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't think so. So bailing out of the plane over the water, I don't know. Doesn't really cut the mustard for me. No. So next theory is that he bailed out of the plane over land.
I kind of like this theory.
Yeah, so he bails out, the plane just goes on and crashes in the water somewhere, because obviously they never found the wreckage on the land. So let's say he bails out, and as he hits the ground, he's knocked unconscious, and before he can regain consciousness, he's overcome by hypothermia and exposure.
But he didn't have serious injury. I guess
he had no serious injuries.
My thought is that perhaps he could have bailed out, like if he was having a hard time for whatever reason, or when he took off. Like, nobody really says what happened immediately after he took off, but maybe he was misgauging, because it was dark and all that. Maybe he was misgauging and he found himself very close to the ground and, about to crash or whatever, for whatever reason. So he bailed out, but he was a little confused. I mean, you don't have to have a serious injury to like become confused and disoriented after something like that. So if he bailed out close to the ocean, turned around and said, "Oh, I'll just walk back to the hotel," his gash on his leg because he hit it when he jumped out. So he starts trying to walk back to the hotel and then is overcome by exposure because it's sleeting horribly. He dies on the mountaintop where he thought he was supposed to be for whatever reason, and then the plane continues on and crashes into the sea. That's my theory.
Well, and I can dovetail right off of that because that doesn't exactly explain what happened to the Cessna itself. But if you go and you look at the map of this area, there's a pretty decent sized road there. So it is possible that he could have landed on the road. So nobody saw him come back to the airport. But he could have landed on the road. Okay, we're still saying that he's injured himself somehow or he's disoriented. And he just steps out of the plane. He doesn't turn it off. And it's big storm. It will keep the truck forward, and that road is pretty close to the edge of the coastline.
I don't know if it's that close.
Well, I mean, it's close enough. An airplane, if you leave it at a decent RPM, it'll keep walking forward and eventually drive itself right into the water.
Seems like somebody would have noticed.
Somebody would have found it by now because it wouldn't go very far
underwater.
But if the doors are closed and it's covered in ice and it hits the water, it's not going to sink super fast. We've got a crazy windstorm going on. It's possible that it got drug out to sea. I mean, and this is that we're operating under the presumption that this wreck that was supposedly found is real. I mean, again, we're pulling this out of nowhere, but I'm just saying I think that what Devin came up with is entirely possible.
That he bailed close to land and then, I think it probably stayed. I don't think he probably landed. I think he probably bailed for whatever reason. Maybe it was getting icy and he realized, oh, like crap, I can't actually keep flying this.
I can't see. Yeah.
I'm going to take it as close as I can to the ground and then bail.
Yeah.
And it just,
He would have been a lot better off bailing over water, and I'll tell you why. Did you go on Google Street View and look at the island?
No,
you didn't.
I love that you asked us that every time, and we always stare at you.
I know. I did. I drove up and down this road a little bit around the hotel and everything, and I looked at the countryside, and there are a lot of rock outcroppings. They're everywhere in this island. So bailing over land,
bad idea.
Really bad idea. I mean, if you have a nice smooth meadow, maybe, but if you're gonna smash yourself to pieces on a
he couldn't see
granite rock. Well,
he's
been hanging out there, and he knows what the countryside looks like. He knows there's a lot of rocks sticking out of the ground.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
So yeah, I think that jumping out over land would have been the worst idea since New Coke. There's another popular theory out there. You guys have probably seen this one. Peter Gibbs was an MI5 agent.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. Maybe he was. I don't know.
Maybe he was. I don't see any evidence to that. But he was doing cloak and dagger stuff in Northern Ireland, perhaps.
Oh.
And Northern Ireland is actually not that far away from Mull. So if he jumped in the plane and at the airspeed of a Cessna 150, he could be in Northern Ireland in 45 minutes.
It would also explain why he was like, you know what I'm going to do right now? Leave my girlfriend and go on an airplane trip in the middle of the night.
Flying, yeah.
After some wine, and it's gross out.
Because that's great cover.
Well, I mean, it's a cover.
It's a cover. You do what you're assigned to do and try to maintain your cover.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the thing. So he got over there, but as this theory goes, his cover was blown. The IRA murdered him. And they brought his body back and dumped it on the hillside to send a message.
And the plane was never found.
And the plane was never found.
Yeah, maybe.
This is not plausible. I mean, if the IRA had murdered him, I doubt that they would have taken the trouble to bring his body back to Mull. Huh?
But what if he flew? Okay, wait. Dovetailing on theories here. He flew, and he picked somebody up, and they went to have their clandestine meeting in the graveyard, or maybe it was the owner who was like, oh, I'm worried about him, so I'm going to go to this one random place, the graveyard, because that makes sense. And they met. They had something, right? They met, and somebody else took the airplane and flew it away, and they knocked him over the head. Knocked Gibbs, right? It's Gibbs we've been talking about.
Peter Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah, knocked him over the head and sent him wandering, and he wandered up the hill and passed out. I mean, you don't have to have that serious an injury to pass out.
That lends credence to the why were both flashlights moving at the same time, because there was that third person.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a third person. Maybe there was another person in the plane, and they pushed Gibbs out at a low altitude and went on, or whatever.
Well, that's what I was going to get to as my next theory, which is that he never got in the plane to begin with. Let's say he was involved with MI5.
Sure.
And let's say
anything.
Yeah, let's say MI5 needs to, in as quiet and discreet a way as possible, get to somewhere, we'll say Northern Ireland, and exfiltrate one of their guys and bring him back home. So this is a two-seater plane, and so what they did is they just had Gibbs position himself at this place, which is conveniently located not too far from Northern Ireland with the plane, and that way the guy who's going to fly the plane to Northern Ireland, collect the cargo, bring it back, he could just drive out there. He's not seen getting on a plane or anything like that. He just takes off and heads to Mull and quietly meets up with Gibbs, gets the airplane, takes off, and unfortunately doesn't come back. So this puts Gibbs in kind of a pickle because he's outside. He can't go back inside the hotel because he's supposed to be in the plane.
Sure.
And your idea of somebody knocking him over the head is plausible. That's occurred to me that perhaps that happened. There was yet other people hanging around. But another possibility is that he had some time to kill, so he decided to go for a little hike. And
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, not much else to do there. So he decided to hike up the hillside, and maybe he went up the hillside to see if he can catch sight of the plane coming back. I don't know.
I just, it's still the thing that's a little outlying to me continues to be the fact that the inn owner or the hotel owner was like, oh, I was worried about him, so I went to the graveyard. Was it a particularly open meadow area where somebody might make an emergency landing? Was there something special about the graveyard that made him say, this is a reasonable place to go?
Well,
or is it that, Gibbs was there, or he knew something about something? I mean, Gibbs was found close to that area.
Well, I don't know. Well, if you look at it on Street View, again, I drove past the graveyard, and it does have a nice, clear, unobstructed view of the sound.
It's
there.
A bit of a rise, isn't it?
It's not real high.
But it's a bit. But it's a little bit higher than most of the ground around it.
Yeah, a little bit. And so, maybe his thinking was that he'd have a better view from out there. I mean, if he wanted to covertly meet with Gibbs, if he could just talk to him, chat with him at the hotel. He didn't really need to do that.
Yeah.
But
you couldn't knock him off at the hotel, though.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
No, that's true.
Sorry.
But
just theorizing.
But back to my theory that he was not actually in the plane.
He goes for a hike and he dies.
He goes for a hike, and remember he got a 3-inch laceration on his left shin. He fell, tripped, perhaps, and it could be just an amazing coincidence. The guy in the plane had a terrible run of luck and wound up crashing because of the sleet storm, and then Gibbs was out there just wandering around, wondering how he was going to explain this when he gets back to the hotel, and then he trips over one of those rock outcroppings I was just talking about, hits his head, and immediately, goes unconscious for a while and dies of exposure. It could be just something like that.
Or the guy doesn't crash. Maybe the guy doesn't crash, but he's unsuccessful. There are lots of things that could have happened to the pilot if there was the third person pilot.
Yeah, maybe he didn't crash. Maybe he just absconded with the plane.
Yeah. So, I guess that theory would mean that his girlfriend would have had to be in on it too.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm having a hard time with is that
she would also have to be an agent.
Yeah. Now, another possibility, if you want to look at it this way, yes, she's in on the whole thing. Another possibility is that this was a super, super secret operation. Let's presume, right?
Sure.
Okay. Because there was this run of bad luck, because the plane took off and didn't come back, that means that Gibbs is supposed to be dead.
So she kills him.
And no, she doesn't kill him.
Oh.
But what happens is Gibbs in her phone MI5 or MI6 or whatever,
Whoever their handlers
and
are.
they just say, "Hey, look, we're in a bit of a pickle here. If I confess that I was not in that plane, we're going to blow this secret operation. So you guys need to find me a new identity and come up with a corpse that we can plant somewhere."
That's also true.
Although, and again, but that doesn't really make sense either, though, when you think about it, because if the plane disappeared and crashed at sea, they don't really need a corpse.
Yeah.
So it probably was his corpse, you know?
Well, I mean, that's man, we're really getting off track here. But
Yeah.
that's presuming that the plane did crash, and that whoever took off didn't change their mind or double cross them.
Didn't get murdered by somebody at the other end of the flight.
Yeah. I mean, that's presuming all of that. So it could be that they realize, Billy has just turned to the other team and has just totally hosed us here. What do we do? The one thing and I like the idea of dumping a body, of planting a replacement body. What gives that a little bit of teeth for me is that when they searched for him and everybody was out and about, they were searching right near where his
they
body
would have
was found.
found him right there.
Now it's possible that they were not looking for a body; they were looking for wreckage.
Yeah, but you see a body. I mean, it doesn't seem like this place is so gigantic that you don't also notice that there's a dead body.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about it is that. Since it is wreckage, it's a fairly large item. You don't need to line up in a file 5 feet apart.
That's fair.
And stuff.
And I don't know what.
Yeah, you could probably
condition.
scan an entire hillside from the road.
That's fair.
And so,
Yeah,
I don't know how close they got to where his body was.
All right, I'm liking.
Or it could be that somebody did come back at a later date and put the body there. I don't know why you'd go to the trouble. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe why not?
Yeah, who knows?
Gosh, this is a big old mystery. This is one of the first times I think that Joe's done a mystery that he has not claimed to solve.
Well, I think
well, it's because it had that crazy twist.
Yeah.
And he didn't want anybody to throw their iPod down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That you got to admit that was a pretty good twist.
It's good. It's real good.
Really good. Yeah. And it's still a puzzler to those people out there. I'm still puzzling the heck out of me.
Yeah, me too.
But I am considering that I don't think he crashed the plane and climbed out and swam. I don't think he bailed over water. I don't think he bailed over land. I don't think he was an MI5 agent. I think that my theory that somebody else took off with his plane is probably more plausible than any of those theories, really. Even though I
the
can't
bailing
prove
out
it.
thing is just
No.
it's really, really screwy.
He just didn't have enough injuries. I mean,
Yeah.
you get injuries from the most mundane things. I mean, you can, I don't know, twist an ankle because you walked weird on a path. I mean, when you jump out of an airplane, you're gonna have injuries.
Well, yeah, let's assume you get it down to say 50 feet off the ground.
Even that,
Even
there's
that
no way.
50-foot fall can kill you.
Yeah.
But also remember, if he's throttled back to stall speed, he's going about 50 miles. Just bouncing down the road for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, and even on the water, you're going to be skipping like a stone over the water.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt.
And we can't avoid the fact that yes, there are stories of people who have bailed out of planes and survived basically unscathed.
Yeah.
But normally they bailed out and they landed on an incline that had some kind of soft surface, snow or whatever it is, and they slid for a while, so they burned up all that kinetic energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't just land flat.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for soft tissue. If you live through something like that, you're oh, I'm basically unscathed with so much muscle damage that I'm in physical therapy for 5 years or whatever, and that sort of stuff shows up on autopsies just as much as broken bones and things like that. So they would have said he didn't have any broken bones, but his back was real messed up. You would notice that
after
sort
4
of
months, will that be as obvious when the critters are using him for a lunch plate?
I assume so. I think so.
But I think that if he'd bailed, say with your theory that he bails figuring that he'll get a softer landing if he's going out to sea, and so when he hits the ground, the ground is sloping down away from him. And the problem, and that I thought that occurred to me that would be one way to solve or to
mitigate the issue.
One way to sort of mitigate the whole issue, but. The problem is you're still going to roll for a while, and he is absolutely guaranteed in that countryside
to hit
at
something.
least one rock outcropping.
Yeah.
At a pretty decent
And it
speed.
only
Yeah.
takes one.
Yeah, it only takes one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed.
Yep.
So yeah, I think he wasn't in the plane, and it could be that he was just
Something
hanging
else.
out. Somebody killed him, or he just had an accident and just coincidentally died. I mean, I just don't know. Anyway, you guys have any more theories?
No.
No, I think we've gone through just about every possible theory. Yeah,
And impossible.
and yeah, I don't know that we're ever going to know the answer to this one. But it's an interesting little story, you got to admit.
Yeah.
So that's it for this week, folks. Find us. You can actually find our episodes and all sorts of other fun material on our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. We're